Christian nationalism, be careful what you wish for. In the United Kingdom, we've recently had a new Archbishop of Canterbury, the official leader of the official church in an officially Christian nation, England. Will she uphold Christian truth? Not really. Here in Scotland, we've got a legal national church, the Church of Scotland. Do they uphold Christian truth? Well, pretty hit and miss. Now, there's a lot of chatter around the globe at the moment in America, but also in the UK, about Christian nationalism. Now, there's no really agreed definition of what Christian nationalism is. But for some people, it's an accusation. You're Christian nationalists. You're trying to impose your views on the nation. And then there's other people who say, yes, we're Christian nationalists. That is more or less sort of what we want to do. But there isn't really an agreed definition. So what might it mean being a Christian nationalist? Now, if you mean by Christian nationalism, I would like the nation to be governed by Christian principles because they work and they are good. In other words, we want to see Christians bringing their values into politics and government and those values being enacted across the nation. If that's Christian nationalism, that's what the Scottish Family Party is all about. Now, these principles, of course, some people agree with them who are not Christians or of other religions as well. But the idea of Christians bringing their values into politics and government, we are right behind it. Now, some people by Christian nationalism, they mean something different. They mean having leaders who will speak of their personal, genuine faith and be strong and clear in that. Now, I'd say on that issue, if you want those sort of leaders, then elect them. If you want the royal family, for example, I mean, we've got a royal family, very prominent leaders in the United Kingdom. If you would like them to be Christian, to speak from a Christian point of view, I would say, well, pray for them. Because how else can this happen? You could look at the approach of, say, Iran, where they have a supreme Muslim leader, the Ayatollah, and so they have their supreme leader is always a Muslim, because they just have to be, that's the Ayatollah, and then you elect people underneath those. So that's a way of making sure that your supreme leader is always a Christian. Would you really like a system like that in the UK? Who's going to appoint this supreme leader? Do you think they really would be Christian? Is that really where we want to go? I would say definitely not. So any idea that Christian nationalism means there's going to be some system to make sure the leaders are Christian, well, I would say forget it. Right, number 3, what else do people mean by Christian nationalism? Sometimes they mean they want special privileges for Christianity in the nation. Now, the first one that comes up in this discussion usually is education. We want Christianity given a special role in schools. Now, in Scotland, to a very small degree, that might be the case on paper. I'm not sure it happens in practice. But I think when it comes to what goes on in schools, it's really going to reflect society. If let's say the Scottish Family Party became the government, and let's say we did, I'm not saying we would, but let's say we said, right, we want Christian assemblies in every school across the nation, and they've got to present, Christian teaching. And a lot of schools, who's going to do it? Who's going to present this? I mean, there aren't any Christian staff. They're going to get the minister. They're going to go and get the local minister, are they? How will that go? In many cases, maybe not particularly well. So I think if you insist on Christian education without genuine faith among a substantial portion of the community, then you end up with something very weak, and it can end up as a form of inoculation. So instead of attracting the children to Christianity, they're inoculated against it. They think they've experienced at school genuine Christianity and they've rejected it, but actually it wasn't really the real thing. I mean, what other privileges could Christianity be granted in a nation under Christian nationalism? I'm not quite sure, but whatever those privileges are, if they're granted by the government, then there will be strings attached, and that's not good. For example, with the monarchy, the coronation would be explicitly Christian in the liturgy used. I would say that's a good thing. Does it have a big influence on the nation? I would say it's pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Now, number 4, this is what a lot of people mean when they talk about Christian nationalism. They mean that a country should declare itself officially to be a Christian country. Christianity is the official religion of this country. Now, we've already got that in the UK. We've got it in Scotland. They've got it in England. That is already the case. The Church of Scotland is legally recognised as the National Church of Scotland. The Church of England is established as the State Church of England, and the king and the prime minister appoint the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is just a bizarre situation. The king has a special role within the Church of England. So it is the official religion. Christianity is the official religion. But then the question's got to come next. Well, whose Christianity? Doesn't feel a lot like mine. You may be thinking it doesn't feel a lot like yours. So if you're going to have a Christian nation, who decides what type of Christianity is to be embodied in the nation? And that's going to be a tricky question, because you could well end up with a situation where sort of heretical and unfaithful churches and Christians, or maybe they're not even Christians, are going to be in those positions. And I think that's worse than not having a state church. Also, a state church is going to attract the ambitious because it's part of national life, so it gives a prominent platform. People are going to want that attention and that prominence, whether they're Christians or not. And I think that's what we see to some extent. Whereas, if you have a free market of churches, then true faith bears fruit. Some churches are going to grow, some churches are going to decline. But at the moment, state churches, national churches, the Church of England, the Church of Scotland, they're given a platform. The media and politicians look to them for the view of the church, but often they're given a very liberal view. Now, in terms of growing your church, liberal theology is not a great plan. It leads to decline, basically. More conservative traditional theology leads to growth. Whereas having the national church distorts that picture and promotes the liberal views to the forefront. Right, number 5, 2 to go in terms of Christian nationalism. How about if people say, well, we want to declare we're a Christian nation, but we don't want a state church. We'll forget the state church business, but we should declare we're a Christian nation. But when I think about that, I think, so, okay, someone makes a declaration they're a Christian nation. Who makes that declaration? I mean, the government, I guess. And maybe the leader at that time is a Christian. Maybe the next leader won't be a Christian. Maybe the next government won't be remotely interested in Christian values. So what are they going to do? Are they going to overturn it, or are they going to pretend that they are Christians? Because if it's a really strong culture, we're a Christian culture, then the motive will be there for leaders to have to play as Christians, to act as Christians. And also an issue you get there is people then start to think, oh, we're a Christian nation, so I must be a Christian. Being a member of this nation must make you a Christian, which obviously isn't the case. You can't create reality through a label. Now, Russia is normally described very much as a Christian nation. Do you know what percentage of people go to church? About 6 to 10%. That's maybe not too different than the United Kingdom as well. And another thing, when you get this sort of nationalism, it's like Hindu nationalists in India. Some of them would say things like, if you're not a Hindu, you're not really an Indian. If you want to be Indian, be a Hindu. And what does that say to the people in India, like the Christians, for example, who are not Hindus? It's like saying, well, you're not really a proper citizen. You're not really fitting in this society. So I wouldn't want anything that implies, if you're not a Christian, you're not really Scottish. You're not really British. I think that is really unhelpful. Because also people start believing the converse. If you are Scottish, then you sort of probably are a Christian somehow, which is just not true. Now, point number 6, this is my last one about Christian nationalism. We're going into deep water here. You can tell me what you think in the comments, because I'm not absolutely sure what I think. This is the idea of sort of spiritual protection. God's favour rests on those who acknowledge God's place, or who identify as Christian. Now, I would say, I think I believe that. But do I believe it even if the people are insincere? Then I don't think I believe that applies. I believe that God responds to what's in our hearts, and I believe that outward symbols and statements are just that, and they don't really sort of influence God or force his hand or lead to him offering extra protection or blessing to people just by an outward sign. I think it's what's inside us that counts. So if you agree with me that it's what's in people's hearts that really counts in terms of God blessing a nation or pouring his favour or protection on a nation, then what do we need to do? Well, the answer is evangelism. We want more people to become Christians. And something that I'm pleased to say seems to be happening to a significant degree across the United Kingdom now. So in that sense, if you want a Christian nation, though there's a nation comprised of a population that's largely Christian, then evangelize, encourage people to become Christians, invite people to become Christians, and that is in a sense, the only route to meaningfully be a Christian nation. Now, if people think about, let's try and elect Christian leaders, I mentioned this earlier on, but I'm not sure about that. I think politics is about principles and policies and character of the leaders and of the parties. That's what really matters. Now, I believe if you've got a nation that's infused with Christian values, because a huge proportion of the population are Christians, then the people who get elected are going to reflect those values, and they're going to tend to be Christians. A lot of them are going to be Christians, but maybe not all, but a substantial number will be. And I think that's the way things should happen naturally. So with the Scottish Family Party, are we Christian nationalists? Well, there's no official definition. There's no agreed definition of what that means. But what we definitely do agree is that traditional Christian values are best for society. Now, a lot of people who are not Christians agree with those values. We think that's great. But a lot of us, like myself, I am a Christian. So as I see it, bringing Christian values into politics, into government, is the best for the nation. So if the Family Party, if we get an MSP elected in every region at the election next year, probably, 7 or 8 of them would be Christians who would be willing to speak about their faith. So if people are wanting to see Christians in politics, vote for the principles, and then as a byproduct of that, you're going to get Christians in politics. Christians from across the denominational spectrum. Now, it's interesting, sometimes people accuse the Scottish Family Party. They say, you're just Christian, or you're Christian nationalist, or whatever. I always find that quite interesting. If you look at the state churches, the Church of England, the Church of Scotland, John Swinney is more in line with the teaching of the Church of England and the Church of Scotland than the Scottish Family Party is. And yet no one accuses John Swinney of saying, you're just bringing your faith into politics. You're just trying to impose Christian views. Even though what he believes is pretty in line with the Church of England and the Church of Scotland. It's interesting. Like with the Lib Dems. I mean, the values of the Lib Dems are much more in line with the Church of Scotland or the Church of England than the Scottish Family Parties are. But I've never heard anyone saying, the Lib Dems, they're just Christian nationalists. They're just trying to impose the agenda of the Church of Scotland and the Church of England on the nation. Why don't people say that? I think, to be honest, the reason they say it is that people actually know what real Christianity is. Anyway, that's just a few introductory thoughts on the knotty topic of Christian nationalism at our conference, which comes up very shortly on the 8th of November. Get your tickets, the link below. Greg DeBleeker is going to be speaking on this topic at greater length. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. So get your tickets and see you there. Thanks.